So many people tell me that I am so lucky to be a long season gardener, and usually I would agree with those people, except this past summer has been really rough. We had a ton of heat waves, and I know that in the summer, temperatures are supposed to rise. It's supposed to be hot, but we had more heat waves than usual. And even though now it is technically fall, in October, we are still dealing with heat waves. We are in one right now, and we have been in triple digits. So it's been a rough fall for me so far too. And I am just starting to feel really stressed out, overwhelmed, and burnt out. And I am so lucky that I don't have to deal with snow or extreme cold temperatures. So I don't want to take that for granted, but there are downsides to being a long season gardener. So I'm going to show you and talk about what is stressing me out right now and why I feel burnt out, as well as talk about a plan for next year's summer garden so that hopefully this time next year, I won't be feeling burnt out.
My peppers have only really just started taking off, even my overwintered ones, and I will just overwinter them again in place this winter, so I won't really need to do anything to them, just prune and cover them when it starts to get really cold, but that won't even be until December. My first frost date is looking like December 6th this year, but in years past, it's never been a hard freeze, just a very light freeze for maybe 1 or 2 nights. So I still have a while to actively take care of these plants because I need to keep them happy until it's time to overwinter them. So I still have to make sure that they have enough water and nutrients before I get to take a little break with them. My tomatoes are still hanging on, and some I have yet to harvest tomatoes off of because they were just slower for some reason. But I love tomatoes, and I do want to keep them going as long as I can because I've worked hard for them, and if I can keep harvesting decent tomatoes, then I should keep them going as long as they want to. Some plants have already died off, and others are looking sad because we are just having so many heat waves, and it's been rough. I can't care for them the way they need to be cared for. It's been hard because it really does affect my plants even if I use shade cloth. And I can't prune them because pruning them in the heat can cause more damage, and you really shouldn't fertilize your plants when it's hot outside because the plants are so stressed out that adding something like fertilizer could cause even more damage. My cucumbers are looking so tattered and just bad, but they are still flowering, and I haven't gotten that many cucumbers yet this year, so if they want to catch their second win, then I want to let them. I guess one good thing about not being able to start my cooler season things yet is that the squirrels have been terrorizing my garden. I had been sowing zinnias, cosmos, and sunflowers, and they just get dug right up. And all of my containers are getting dug up too. I cover them with baskets and trays, but it just makes my garden look like a wasteland. But if they aren't covered, then they will 100% get dug up. I also have a lot of plants that need to be transplanted or potted up, but with all of these heat waves, it's been hard to find a good window to do so because you also don't want to transplant when it's hot because most plants do go through a bit of transplant shock, but transplanting during a heat wave could be way too much stress for the plants and they could even die. And even when it cools down in the evenings, the days are getting shorter, so I have a very small window of time to work, or by the time it is cool enough, I have other things that I need to do, or I only have time to complete one task, and then I get overwhelmed trying to quickly figure out what the priority is, or I see something that does need immediate attention. But I have to always remind myself that plants can be so resilient. So even if they look terrible, as long as they have water at a minimum, they should be fine, and to just do the best that I can do. I do feel like I took on a lot this year, so I think how I'll try to avoid garden burnout next year is to grow less plants, specifically less tomato plants. Sometimes I can't even eat or process them quickly enough, so they just end up in the compost, so I really feel like I can get by with less, and my dad gardens too, and we share with each other, so it's not like I'll be lacking tomatoes or other produce. Another thing that is contributing to the burnout is the harvesting. I am happy that my plants are still producing enough to make them worth keeping around, and the end goal of gardening is to have something to harvest, but with the heat and shorter days, I find myself trying to get up early enough to run outside to harvest some things before it gets too hot, or making myself go back out in the early evening to quickly harvest things before it gets dark on me. And then I'm constantly running back outside because there is always something that I forgot to harvest while I was already outside. I am bummed because I do want to start growing my cooler season veggies and I feel like I'm behind, but I know that now is not the right time. It is just still too hot and they're just going to bolt quickly. But to make it easier for myself and to recover from this garden burnout, even when I do grow my cooler season things, I'm not going to grow a lot. Most of what I grow I think will be done hydroponically, some outdoors and some indoors. And for my raised beds, I'll plant some root veggies, and for the rest of my raised beds, I may lay down some pea seeds because either I end up harvesting them and eating them, or I can just let them go and have them end up being a cover crop to replenish my soil from the summer garden. So if you find yourself where you are starting to feel burnt out from gardening for whatever reason, don't be discouraged. Just do what you can do and know that some things are out of your control, and be willing to let some things go. And if you can, just dial it back a bit the next season to give yourself a break. Gardening is a great and amazing life skill to have, so don't give it up. Just make some adjustments and do your best.